Today we are going to discuss about modulation. Modulation is nothing but it's the heart of our communication system. Modulation is the process of changing the characteristics of carrier signal in accordance with message signal is called a modulation. The reverse process of modulation is called as a demodulation. So modulation, the broad category of communication can be classified into analog communication and digital communication. Modulation methods also can be classified into analog modulation and digital modulation. So again, your analog modulation can be classified into two: continuous wave modulation and pulse modulation. Based on the type of carrier used, analog modulation, it can be classified. If the carrier signal is continuous signal, then it is called continuous wave modulation. Then if the carrier signal is a pulse, then it is called as a pulse modulation. Again, your continuous modulation can be classified into three: amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, and phase modulation. Now, pulse modulation can be classified into four: pulse amplitude modulation, pulse position modulation, pulse width modulation, pulse code modulation. Now I need to discuss about amplitude modulation. So amplitude modulation is nothing but changing the characteristics of here amplitude as a characteristics of carrier wave. So I need to change the amplitude of the carrier wave in accordance with the message signal is called as a amplitude modulation. See here sinusoidal wave is your input message signal that is having the properties of low frequency signal. So for short distance communication, we no need to do the modulation. In order to transmit our data for long distance, we need a modulation. So I need to transmit my data far away. I need to prefer amplitude modulation. So here my input message signal is having a low frequency. I need to add my input signal with my carrier signal. Carrier signal is having a high frequency. So adding the carrier signal with my message signal, now characteristics of the carrier amplitude is changing with respect to input message signal. So that is called as a amplitude modulation. So here, in order to perform amplitude modulation, I need to calculate a modulation index is nothing but Vmax plus Vminimum divided by Vmax minus Vminimum into 100. This is the formula to find out the modulation index. Depending upon the modulation index, three waveforms should be obtained at the output side. M modulation index less than 1, under modulation will be occurred. M equal to 1, critical modulation will occur. M greater than 1, over modulation will occur. This is the waveform for under modulation.